Our next guest on the Omega podcast is Alan Stein, the Chief Executive Officer of Kadima Careers. Alan possesses extensive experience in providing expert advice to seasoned professionals who are seeking new career opportunities. His insights and strategies have proven invaluable, helping thousands navigate the complexities of the digital age.
Welcome to the Omega Podcast with Alan Stein, the founder and CEO of Kadima Careers. Alan is a former executive at Google, Meta, Salesforce, Tableau, and American Express. With nearly 30 years of leadership experience, Alan is on a mission to accelerate 1 million careers by the year 2040. Alan, it is such a pleasure to have you on the Omega Podcast.
Thanks a lot, Keenan. I'm really happy to be here.
Fantastic. I know based upon your bio, you have had such stellar experiences at leading companies around the globe. But for our listeners, can you share with us how you started Kadima Careers?
Yeah, great question. So there's this concept called ikigai. It's a Japanese term, which means reason for living. It loosely translates into reason for living. So if you can identify what you enjoy doing, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what people will pay for, it kind of creates this Venn diagram that overlaps, and that's your reason for living. So I realized that during the pandemic of 2020 that I wasn't so thrilled working in the corporate world for another 25 years. And I started to think about what I wanted to do. It was a midlife crisis and just reconsidered things. And it's like, oh, let me start coaching people. I used to do it for free. And then I was like, oh, I can start charging for this. And because I'm someone who's worked for these large organizations that have always built for scale, that's how my mind is wired. And I was like, how can we scale this from just instead of one-on-one coaching, but how can we help support hundreds of thousands, millions of people land a better job? So that's kind of how it started. And I started as a side hustle while I was still at Salesforce to kind of mitigate my risk. And then after a bit, I realized that there was something to this. And Salesforce also grew tired of me. And I reached a nice exit package with them and left there in September 2021 to go all in on Kadima.
Fantastic. Just that entire journey of you recognizing the need for aspiring professionals trying to really level up their game, whether it's increasing their salary package or just experiencing new company cultures. I think that's such a dynamic sector and niche to be a part of. But Alan, when it comes to these large companies, what were some of the key takeaways that you were able to utilize to really help some of the customers or professionals that you work with?
The fact that the interview process is it's very predictable, but it's also very poorly done. So because it's predictable, there are ways that people can optimize for it. And I'm an operator by nature, so I've essentially boiled down the whole process of how do you best get the interview, and after you get the interview, how do you convert that limited opportunity of the interview into an offer, and then when you bust your hump to get that offer, how do you make sure you get the return and the pay that you are worth after that? So broke it down step by step, thinking about how I've done it across my career. And I have a 25-year career. I've worked at 21 companies, 29 jobs. I've had 38 bosses. I've hired lots of people. And I realized that it's a fairly formulaic process, even though it seems intimidating and ambiguous for lots of people.
Yes, it could definitely be ambiguous. And the fact that you worked at so many different companies just helps with professionals being able to have really a full scope of what's possible, especially when it comes to the opportunities that you're able to relate to them. When it comes to recruitment at some of these large corporations, there are so many different nuances and skill sets that they are looking for in candidates. Based upon your experience at these leading companies, what would you say is one specific skill set that really sets other candidates apart from one another?
It really depends on the role and the seniority of it, but I don't know if it's a skill, but the thing that sets candidates apart are referrals, and more so than referrals, advocates, especially for attractive companies like a Salesforce or a Google or an OpenAI or Anthropic. Everybody and their mother want to work at these companies now. So these companies are getting thousands of applicants. I've heard a role at Google got 18,000 applicants. So it sets people apart. And if they get 18,000 applicants, they're only talking to about 20 of them, if that. If you want to be set apart, you often need to have an advocate, or you need a damn good profile and get that application in very quickly because these roles are in high demand and they go quickly.
Having a referral is so difficult, but also so crucial in that hiring process. And with the utilization of AI being embedded at these large corporations to really lessen the amount, as you mentioned, if they're having 18,000 applicants for one role, they can't go through 18,000 resumes or cover letters. It's just too time consuming. I mean, do you sense that the utilization of AI utilized in resume, cover letter, or maybe even screening is a good tactic for these companies to use for first impressions? I mean, you mentioned that they may shorten that list to maybe 20 or so applicants. What is something that they should be mindful about? I mean, do you see there being any biases, any issues with that type of tool being utilized or being embedded?
So whether we call it AI or call it algorithms, it's been working, it's been in place through ATS's application tracking software for decades now. So when I applied to Google back in 2011, before people used the term AI, when I submitted my application, they were still running it through their application tracking software and matching it to the role and seeing how closely it matched and comparing it to other candidates. There's no way that these companies are going to stop using automated tools and techniques to sift through 18,000 applications. I just posted a role at Kadima Careers for a business development rep. Within 2 weeks, we got 4,000 applicants. How the hell am I? And I'm the one hiring for it. I'm a CEO. I'm working 17-hour days. And how am I going to go through those 4,000 applications? I'm not. So what I did is I created some sort of filters on it to suss out the 4,000 to get it down to 50 good ones. And then I ran those 50 good ones through AI and said, which of the ones are the best candidates here? And then it gave me a list. And then I looked at them. I did some gut check. But how, it's not possible for anyone to, if applicants are expecting that a human is going to spend significant time on your resume or your LinkedIn, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely extremely crucial. And as you mentioned that you recently shared a role. Now, can you kind of elaborate a bit more about that? What type of platforms are these recruiters as well as your company looking into? Is LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, I mean, just to name a few, are these type of platform being best ways to really engage with different different companies? Or is there kind of a one size fits all where you believe applicants should be applying for to really get the best results in their search to find a new role?
Yeah, it depends. Generally what we recommend our clients to do is to first create a list of target companies, identify 40 plus companies that you're focused on, and then look at those first party job sites. So if NVIDIA is on your list, look at nvidia.com/jobs. If Salesforce is on your list, salesforce.com/careers, goldmansachs.com/jobs, similar things to that. You want to be looking as a candidate at the first party sites, because if you're waiting for it to be posted on LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter or Indeed or Glassdoor, first off, they're not always going to be the freshest roles. Secondly, the distribution, LinkedIn has 1 billion users. So once a role is posted on LinkedIn, not only are you seeing that, but theoretically 1 billion other competitors can be seeing it. So how are you going to stand out there? So you need to look at the first party sites, which are more comprehensive list of all the roles that are available, more fresh, more updated, and also some of the companies that are highly attractive. Look at where the applications come from. And if the application is sourced through Indeed or LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter, they're going to just look at you as a job shopper. But if you apply at datadog.com/jobs and they know where the application's coming from, it's more likely that you're actually a serious candidate for Datadog. You care about Datadog, and you didn't just see that role pop up on ZipRecruiter or in LinkedIn.
That's great advice. Definitely to prioritize those specific platforms is, I believe, the best way in order to have your resume or cover letter seen.
And screw cover letters. We can talk about cover letters, but cover letters at highly sought after companies are not being read.
Interesting. Now, do you believe that's the best way in receiving an application? I mean, are they doing alternatives if they're not utilizing cover letters?
Referrals and advocates. That's how these companies are sourcing most of their candidates. The data shows that between 40 and 83% of hires are through referrals. So that's what they're doing. So if Google was opening that role and they got 18,000 applicants in, and maybe 50 were referrals internally, they're going to look there first before they look at that pile of 18,000. They might do a quick sift through the 18,000 to find people from Stanford and Princeton and that worked at OpenAI before and worked at Microsoft or whatever target list. And they might pull 100 out of those 18,000 that fit their goal. But then they're first going to look at the 50 people that got referred in. And all 50 of those referrals are not going to all get an interview, but probably all 50 of those will at least get the eye of the recruiter and or the hiring manager on them.
Okay. No, that's definitely very insightful. So cover letters are off the table. But if you're talking about referrals specifically, what advice do you give some of your customers you're mentoring about networking? Because networking is, I believe, is in an art form, and not everyone has that skill set. So what advice do you give to someone who's really trying to get a job at Google or get a job at Kadima Career and they don't know someone who has an existing role? What advice or method that they can utilize to really get themselves out there?
Enjoying this episode of the Omega Podcast? We want to hear from you. Please share your thoughts or feedback in the comments. You can also visit omegaconsulting.online for more resources, insights, and industry updates. Let's get back to this executive conversation.
Yeah, it's a great question, Keenan. Not everyone's born with that skill set, but everybody can learn that skill set. So I didn't have that skill set early on in my career, and it limited my opportunities. I didn't realize how much it limited them, but you can learn how to build relationships. And specifically for earning, not even referrals. Referrals now are not even doing the job. You really need an advocate. And what I consider the difference between a referral and an advocate is a referral will just give you a link and say, hey, go apply through my unique link so that if you get hired here at Meta, I'm going to get $2,000. And that's all that happens. And it will get higher in the algorithm than just a cold submitted application. But if you have an advocate at Spotify, they'll be like, hey, Keenan, let me reach out to the hiring manager. It looks like you're a great fit here. And they'll ping the hiring manager on Slack or email and say, hey, I just spoke to this guy, Keenan. He has a really good background. Looks like he's a good fit for this role. Are you still hiring for this sales development rep or whatever the role is? And by pinging the hiring manager is going to go to your profile. And if you look decent and you came referred in by someone else at Spotify, they'll be like, sure, let me talk to this guy. Let me send him on to the recruiter to do a recruiter screen. Or they'll find out that, oh, we just posted this externally for just to cover our tushes. We really have a strong internal candidate. We're not actively hiring this one. So at least you get that feedback instead of going into a black hole.
Yeah, no, those black holes are pretty dark. And I know some people that I've spoken to that have great experiences just don't get those open door opportunities because, again, they don't have the connection. They don't even have a good profile. And that's something that I find to be very interesting in this day and time with individuals not able to get seen, especially on LinkedIn. For example, what particular ways should individuals be prioritizing their LinkedIn profile or maybe their online presence to really help engage with recruiters or individuals that are doing projects? Because, LinkedIn is fairly new. And before LinkedIn, people utilized Facebook to help screen to see if the person was legitimate, family life, etc. But now you have LinkedIn where that's practically the only way recruiters are able to see your face, see the recent experiences, see who you're connected with. I mean, it's just a different dynamic. I mean, what should be kind of like the 2 or 3 things that people should have within their LinkedIn profile that should help them, get seen?
Yeah. So one thing, LinkedIn is not that new. So it might be new to some people. It's been around for I'm on the platform now for 21 years. So it started in like 2003. But if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. If you're a professional or honestly, if you're sales or market, like any, not just like getting a job, but you kind of need to be on LinkedIn. And I'm not an investor in it. I don't work for LinkedIn, but I'm just saying it kind of has a monopoly on the career search. When you're on LinkedIn, the truth of the matter is not very many people are going to fall onto your profile. Most people are going to get about like 10 to 30 people to look at their profile in a given week. And LinkedIn tracks those stats and you can look at who's looking at your profile depending on the level of LinkedIn account you have. When you look at who's looking at your profile, it's mostly people trying to sell you crap. It's not mostly people that are trying to hire you. So unless you went to a great school, unless you worked for great companies, unless you work in a niche area that a company is specifically looking to source, the odds are the companies where you want to work for are not going to find you in a sea of a billion users on LinkedIn. So the best thing to use LinkedIn for is to be proactive, is to identify your targets, identify the commonalities so that you can reach out to people to begin those conversations, turn those online conversations into offline chats, into like conversations like this, and build relationships. seek advice. The goal, like have conversations with the goal of learning about how they got into that company, learning about what advice they would offer you to get into a company, learn about what other companies you should be considering, learn about what industry publications you should be reading and learning. And if all goes well, earn a referral, ideally earn an advocate. And we teach our clients this. This is a totally learnable skill. It's not easy, but people can learn how to play the piano too. I don't know how to play the piano, but if I wanted to and there was enough motivation there, I know that there's a way to learn how to play the piano.
Yes, anything is possible. I think there is something along the lines of the 3 Ds. You have your desire, your discipline, and dedication. And that's sort of the way that you can approach learning a new skill set, being able to attain new accolades. But for our listeners, I know you have done incredible work at Kadima Careers, and we basically highlighted, the recruitment journey and advice. But for you, Alan, what particular career milestone helped propel you to do the work that you're doing now and to do it so successfully?
I don't think there's any particular milestone. I think it's a confluence of events. The fact that I've worked for 21 companies, I've had 29 jobs, I've worked for 38 bosses, I've been hired 29 times, I've been fired 5 times, the other 24 times I left on my own volition. I've hired lots of people also. I've hired people at mediocre companies. I've hired people at the world's best companies. So all of those things have given me some unique insight of, I wouldn't call the recruiting process broken. It's not. The recruiting process works well for companies. The recruiting process works really poorly for candidates. So having that unique insight on both sides, where I've probably interviewed 2,000 times myself as a candidate, and I've probably interviewed about 2,000 plus people in my career at Google and Amazon, at American Express and Tableau and all those companies, I see what's occurring, and it's not that different at different companies. The questions might be different, the rubrics might be different, the processes might be slightly different, but the way to get a job is the same. So I think all my lived experience and also, like, I also was a psych major. I was going for a PhD in clinical psychology. I'm very interested in psychology, and a lot of this is influence and motivation and the art of influence. So I don't know, it's just interesting for me. I geek out over this stuff for whatever reason. I take interviews for fun.
That's incredible. And I know that's a skill that's been built over the many, many years that you've been in the sector. But, there's so much disruption right now, especially as I mentioned prior with AI, automation, robotics. I mean, are there any specific trends that you believe is something that you believe the HR director at a major company, like Kadima Careers, should be aware about that could disrupt, employee engagement, or the fact that someone might apply to a particular role? I mean, they're discussing that, the future of the workplace might be a combination of bots and humans, right? So do you have any thoughts or any perspectives that you believe people should be aware about, or maybe things that you may not see to be a priority?
I think there's a lot more turnover in the market than there used to be, at least in the tech industry. I've always seen it in the banking industry. I've seen it in other industries. So the transactional nature of jobs, where companies will hire and fire, the reminder that we're all employed at will. So when you get hired by whatever company you work at, I used to say outside of unions and academia and the government, you're employed at will. But even now, what you're seeing in the government and some academic institutions, you're employed at will wherever you are. So the company has the ability to fire you, to terminate the relationship at any time for any reason. And maybe some states or unions make it a little bit harder, but it hasn't stopped DOGE from eliminating a lot of people that thought that they had a career for life. So knowing that you're no longer... We don't have a right to a job. That's not something that Americans have, that pretty much anyone on earth have a right to a job. We have to earn the job, but knowing that power, we have that ability to to own our career, own our choices, and make the decisions that will best benefit us.
Yeah, it's definitely owning your decision, owning every single really step of your career trajectory. And as you mentioned prior, referrals, networking, just being aware of all the different platforms that people can get their eyes on you are so important. But, as we think about the aspect of recruitment as a whole, because I believe recruitment is changing drastically, especially how they're being able to see different clientele, there's just something I would like to call it something in the water that is just not settling well, especially when it comes to recruiters discussing the inability of finding the right candidates, right? You might get over 18,000 individuals, but they're not really fitting all of your prerequisites for the role, especially when it comes to skill sets. Is there any specific skill set that you believe will be a priority, in the next 5 to 10 years that you would say to candidates now saying, hey, if you can be able to narrow down on this one skill set, you will definitely be a lucrative person in X industry or X role?
I think in general, communication is key. Written and oral communication, building relationships. I think embracing technology. You don't need to be creating new LLMs, large language models, but you need to be able to use ChatGPT or Claude or things of that nature, because if not, it's like not using the internet to do your job and you're going to fall behind. You need to embrace change or choose to fall behind. So the companies that prohibit the use of AI or prohibit or limit the use of AI are going to fall behind. And people that don't embrace AI, technology, new tools, new resources are just going to fall behind. So change or be at the whim of the world. And I choose not to be at the whim of the world. I choose to determine my path to the extent that I can. I know I can't control everything, but there are things that I can control. There are things that I can influence. And then there's a lot of things I can't control. And that stuff I don't worry about.
Yeah, you only can control what you can control, which is yourself, your attitude, the things that obviously that's within your vicinity. But are there any misconceptions that you would just like to leave with our listeners when it comes to applying to some of these major companies that many people have shared with you, on their one-on-ones?
When people get rejected, they take it personally and they hold it against the company, and they're like, they take it as a personal affront. You can't do that. The process is meant to benefit the company. Last time I applied for a job before I started Kadima, I applied to 300 roles. I got 47 interviews. I got 20 final rounds. I got 5 offers. But of those 300 that I applied for, I only got 5 offers, so I got rejected 295 times. Of those 295 times, I never heard back from, or I got ghosted from 165 of them. And if I were to write all those companies off that have ghosted me and written me off and didn't get back to me, I wouldn't have got a job at Salesforce because they ghosted me and rejected me before. I wouldn't have got a job at Meta. I wouldn't have got a job at Google. I got an offer at Amazon after getting rejected 21 times previously. So you got to not take it personally and just understand it's the game.
Yeah. And it just shows your tenacity, to continue even though you experience failure. And I think that that's part of the process of applying to different roles, but more importantly, starting a business, right? Just reaching out, pitching, providing a proposal. I mean, there's a lot of rejection as part of the process that I can also relate with, but you're not allowing that rejection to stop you from reaching or attaining your goals. And I really appreciate you sharing that, Alan.
Yep. Rejection is just life giving us a form of redirection.
Perfect. And well said. Are there any last comments or thoughts that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Last thing, just reiterating that it's our career. No one is going to manage our career. No one is here looking out for us. Some of us have nice parents or nice friends or a nice privilege or things like that. But ultimately, it's up to us. It's up to us to own our career. It's up to us to own our ability to navigate it. And yeah, it's up to us. There are people out there that are willing to help, but you need to go out and reach out and be willing to ask for help in a respectful, humble, and appreciative manner.
That's very well said, Alan. And thank you so much for being a guest on the Omega podcast.
Sure. And if people want to reach out to me, find me, the best way is on LinkedIn, Alan Stein on LinkedIn, or you can go to kadimacareers.com, Kadima, careers.com. And if anyone is looking to get more interviews, turn those interviews into offers, turn those offers into more money, happy to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Keenan.